Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to day 400 of Humanity Rising. 400 is a long time to be broadcasting, and I wanted to just note that we've arrived at this milestone. And I thought it would be appropriate before we launch into our program for today to take a few minutes just to take stock and to offer all of you my personal reflections on 400 days of covering the COVID pandemic. You'll recall that the pandemic was announced on March 11th, 2020. And we started the broadcast on the 22nd of May in 2020 after it was clear that this pandemic was global. The governments had put everybody into lockdown and forced social distancing and mask wearing, that we had a major global challenge on our hands. People were isolated, people were bewildered, people didn't know what actually was happening. So we offered Humanity Rising as really a platform, a global commons, so that every day, we initially did it 7 days a week, people could just simply come together and share what was happening, explore solutions, offer visions. And we realized that this was actually something that people all over the world were interested in participating in. We very quickly had people participating in over 130 countries. We had hundreds of partnering organizations coming in to join in. So day by day, Humanity Rising has been on the air, now only 5 days a week, but consistently around what is going on planet Earth right now, because what's going on is unprecedented. And I think we need to take stock and really examine not only what is happening, but some of the underlying principles that are starting to be placed globally that I think we want to seriously question. The challenge of COVID in terms of the response really hit home to me with Novak Djokovic, the top-seeded tennis player in the world, when he went to Australia a number of weeks ago, perfectly healthy. He'd actually had COVID, so he had the antibodies. He had the COVID test to show that he didn't have COVID arriving into Australia, but he wasn't vaccinated. And after international tumult, the Australian government finally expelled him from Australia and prohibited him from playing in the Australian Open because although he was perfectly healthy and he had the test showing that he didn't have COVID, because he wasn't vaccinated, he wasn't allowed to play. As I witnessed that event, I became increasingly troubled by what's now happening around the world. That a perfectly healthy, top-seeded tennis player couldn't participate in a tournament because he didn't agree with the vaccine mandate. And that is worth pausing and all of us reflecting on for a moment. So I want to offer a couple of principles that I think we need to consider. And I do so in the spirit of Socratic dialogue and inquiry. I do it in the spirit that I've reiterated many, many times on Humanity Rising, that we have a commitment to truth pursued, not truth possessed. We're all like the blind men around the elephant. We have different perspectives. And so what I'm going to offer is just my perspective. But I think it's worth your serious consideration because there are things happening around COVID nearly 2 years in that I find deeply troubling. The first principle is that if you're healthy, you should be able to go anywhere at any time if you're healthy. Particularly in this case, if you've had a COVID test and you're negative, why shouldn't people like Novak Djokovic be able to travel freely if they're healthy? That has been a fundamental human right since the dawn of time. This is the first time in human history, and I want to say that again. This is the first time in human history where people en masse are being told they can't travel and they can't go into places, even if they're perfectly healthy. And I want to question that, and I urge all of us to think about that. Secondly, if you get sick, if you come down with COVID, or you come down with any kind of illness, you should quarantine. You should go into sort of voluntary lockdown. Obviously, if you're sick, you should go out of circulation. That has been part of medical practice for thousands of years, east and west, north and south. If you're healthy, you should be able to ambulate around. If you're sick, then you quarantine. And I would say, if you're sick, you then sit down with your doctor or whoever it is that you trust in these matters, and you should make decisions as to how you're going to improve your health. And within that decision-making process, vaccines should be an option, not a mandated the option. The right of the patient, the right of the doctor to make determination about their health has to be held as sacrosanct. We cannot go into a world where the government tells you, forces you to take something into your body that you don't agree with. There are many ways to get healthy. Many, many ways to get healthy. So vaccines should be an option. They should not be the option. And the third principle, which to me is foundational, is that every human being has the right to determine what goes into their body. We have to maintain, under all circumstances, my friends, the sanctity of the body. Women should have the right over their own body. And whether they have an abortion or not, that's a woman's right to choose. And similarly, every human being must have the right to make decisions about what they're going to put in their body and what they're going to have done to their body. They should not, under any circumstances, be forced to take something into their body that they don't agree with. That has got to be a fundamental right, no matter where you are or who you are. The right of each human being to secure the sanctity of their body. And I would add, fourthly, that as we look at healthcare into the future, it needs to be about how do we build people's overall health capacities? How do we empower healthy people with naturally strong immune systems rather than offering nothing and insisting on vaccinations? the more you'll learn about vaccinations, the more problematic they're going to become to you. And I don't want to go into the vaccines because I'm trying to establish the principle that if you're healthy, like Novak Djokovic was, you should be able to participate in the Australian Open. You should be able to go into a restaurant. You should be able to go into a theater. If they want to make sure that you have your COVID test, that you're clear, absolutely. But then when you get sick, you need to have the right with your physician to make the choices that you believe, whether it's the alternative, whether the integrated medicine, whether it's acupuncture, whether it's a vaccine, whatever it is, big pharma, antibiotics, that should be a choice and a decision that you make, not government mandated. Because we have to, under all circumstances, as human beings, particularly in this modern, complicated world, all of us, in the end, have to have the right over the sanctity of our own bodies. That has got to be the fundamental principle of healthcare and public health, and that the health system should be motivated not around vaccines, but around health and how you use every stratagem possible to improve people's health. Now, I know this will be controversial to many of you, but we need to be thinking as we're now going into 2 years, and we can expect further variance. Whether we want an authoritarian public health system where government agencies are telling us what we have to do in order to move about and participate in civic life as citizens, or whether we should be understanding that there's some deep issues here. There's some principles that we need to articulate and stand for in the public domain. Because we've been 2 years now in a climate of fear. We've been 2 years now in isolation. And that is not healthy for the soul. It's not healthy for community. And I think it needs to end. I think COVID emergency needs to be brought to a close. And I think we need to, as we move forward in our individual countries, begin to take the kind of stands that are required to secure the basic rights that we human beings must have over our body, over our health, as we consult with our doctors and physicians for what it is that we need to get better if we get sick. So on the 400th day of Humanity Rising, as I've been reflecting on what happened to Novak Djokovic, I wanted to just share with you some thoughts for you to ponder. Again, in the spirit of Socratic dialogue and open inquiry, we'll be developing this conversation over the next couple of months, and I welcome all perspectives, as we always do on Humanity Rising, in the spirit not of truth possessed, but of truth pursued. So let us now just take a moment just to take all this in. Let us just pause and take a breath. Let us attune ourselves with our hearts. Just for a moment, listen to our heartbeats and feel the heartbeats of everyone in this session today. We all have beating hearts. And in a spirit of gratitude, in a spirit of thanksgiving, let us contemplate for just a minute the sanctity of our bodies. Thank you, everyone. It's important that we ponder all these issues as we move forward with our daily lives and are building our community. We want to now turn to the very important issue of intentional change. And we're going to begin today a 3-day program tomorrow and then on Monday of how we engage in conscious, intentional transformation. And convening this program is Joy Gilfillan, who you all know. She's been on multiple times on Humanity Rising. She's convened now 2 previous programs, but they were profoundly deep and illuminating and very, very well received. So we've invited her back to initiate another 3 days. So Joy, I want to welcome you. You know her well, so I'll just say thank you for everything that you've done, and welcome to Humanity Rising.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Jim. I've got a James and Jim on the call, so sorry about that. But thank you, Jim. This is a real honor to be able to speak on your conference, on your 400 days. I did not realize that it was actually a demarcation point, and it is. It's pretty profound. So we have quite an agenda this weekend, today, tomorrow, and Sunday or Monday. And part of the brilliance of having the Saturday and the Sunday in the middle is that you're going to have a chance to reflect on what's coming in on today and tomorrow morning, and then over the weekend. And then we've got solutions and good ideas to bring on Monday. And I'd like to share my screen so that I can give a little bit of an introduction to the 3 days. And I realize that I'm already up a page. Okay. So with the Intentional Change series, we've got 3 different days. The first one is Welcome Home. It's Inclusion, Cooperatives, Laughter Yoga, and you're going to get the honor of meeting James, Kara, Michael, and Shelley today, and I'll introduce them in a few minutes. But the whole 3-day weekend, or this whole 3-day period of time, is about humanizing. It's about becoming real. One of the things that people have asked for in the last after chats, and as we've gone along, is people are going, well, you know what, I need to get in direct action. I need to get busy. Enough already of all the theories and the ideas. So one of the things I've done in this particular series of 3 is I've reduced the amount of knowledge that I'm trying to impart as if I'm some smart person. I'm trying to get to the point of who are we as human beings and how do we function as human beings in a real community with our emotional resilience, our taproot to the center of the earth, reconnected. Because we've been very much disconnected, not only by the isolation, not only by the misdirection and the chaos and the conflicts, but we've been disconnected from Mother Earth for a very long time. And I've realized that because I grew up as a farm girl. So one of the first presentations here with Welcome Home is James. He's been working in this community in his own town of Vancouver, British Columbia. And he's been working with real people, real time, doing real work. So that's why we've got him as our opening speaker today. Tomorrow, we've got direct action using inner resonance technology with Maureen. And the January 31st, which is Maureen Edwardson. She's going to talk about, I want to back up to that. She's going to talk about how does this metaphysical and the mind work and the overarching beauty of who we are as humans, as metaphysical or integrated to the entire universe, we are part of a living world. So her conversation, she's bringing on Lauren Singer, and together we're going to be talking about sound and movement and people who are taking direct action for ecological vitality, because we as human beings are living in an ecosystem that's critically important, that we understand that we are affected by the universe around us, and we do affect the universe around us both. The third one is humanizing, growing up, a tale of two elders. This is Barbara Ledger and Irene Morgan, two amazing women who are in their 70s and 80s. And they've lived through an entire span of time. And both of them started with a very strong energy around bringing peace to the planet. That's what they came here for. They know their purpose. They know why they're here. And they're going to tell us a tale of two elders growing up. How did they grow up? How did they change? What's up with them? So that's the introduction to the series. Intentional change, humanizing. One of my questions, when humans are so magnificent, why do we underperform as a species? It baffled my mind when I was a child. I've been studying on it ever since and built these intentional change models and tools that help me to understand from a scientific and intellectual perspective how the world works naturally. It works in spiral energy. Little teams and little pods of people working in triads can expand out into 5 people, and then those things link with other people. And that's what we're going to really watch, how James and his team do this. The natural spiral pattern for growing up is we repeat, just like rings on a tree. We repeat the same patterns. We have emotional intelligence. We can find our way to the future, and we do need to lead with regeneration now. I developed a model of fear, go down into courage and action, and then go up into joy and become a leader, an innovator, and a builder. We've talked about that in a prior conversation. It will come out throughout this whole thing, because the emotional intelligence, when we understand this fear to joy, how to pivot out of fear, real fear, get through the false fear and the fake fear that we've got, that we're dealing with in the marketplace, and then get over to becoming joyful in our own right, taking our own actions in our community. We do have habit patterns that we've developed in cultures, and we've talked about that as these conditioning triangles. This may come up some more over the course of the weekend. But becoming persecuted, being a victim and being rescued, being the person who's the hero who tries to save everybody. These are patterns. They're social and mental and emotional constructs that we create. But when we can get into the spirit of who we are, with our body, our mind, and our spirit intact, integrated and working on purpose, we can become being builders, leaders, and innovators in an active world. And you can put your feet on the ground, have your head in the sky, but go to work with your hands, hugging and doing work on the planet, taking care of the humans that are here, because that's what we're here for. When we do that, we understand that our soul connection to life is ubiquitous. We do have a body, a mind, and a spirit. We can work with the me, the we, and the we all, and we can create individual, community, and planetary cohesion and create exponential transformation. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over I'd like to introduce James, and take it away, James. It's your turn.
I just want to say thank you, Joy. It's a joy that I met you, Joy. It's quite exciting. Joy and I have been working together for, I don't know, a few months now, and through a platform my son created, which is helping us change the way we exchange energy with regard to abundance. So it's been really nice working with her. And I wanted to thank Jim for allowing us to be on the 400th day. That is quite an honor. I'm quite excited about it. So my name's James White, and I've been working in what we call the community living field or sector for 38 years, and I retired this month. So it's been kind of fun, and retirement to me has meant, it's a word that I don't really use. It helped me get some pensions. I'm working more, like they say, when you retire, you work like crazy. So one of the things that we've been doing is, as a group, we're working on getting some different grants to be able to do some work around inclusion. So I'd like to first sort of talk a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to introduce the other three people that I've been working with. So I've been working in the community living field for 38 years. I've been when I first started, it was in the 80s, and British Columbia made a decision to close all their institutions for people with developmental disabilities. And I did quite a bit of work helping close those institutions. So that was really a powerful thing for me to see people who had been incarcerated because they were born different. And it really impacted me quite a bit. And that's why I think I dedicated the rest of my life to this field, because I wanted to support folks to be able to have a real life and be part of their communities. 38 years later, still doing it, but it's a lot farther than it used to be. So I worked in many agencies, nonprofits that supported people around living in group homes, day programs, getting out into community. I've done a lot of work in that area. One of the other things that I just finished doing was I worked in a government agency called Community Living British Columbia, a very good agency, and I was an area manager. I looked after Vancouver City, North Van, West Van, all the Sunshine Coast, all up through, well, people may be familiar with Whistler, the ski area, quite a big area. And I also worked on a couple of reserve areas, Bella Bella, Bella Coola. Still working to develop relationships with the bands there. It's been it's been an honor to be able to do that. The other thing that I've been doing is I work with a group called ESATTA, and that's who we are today that are going to be presenting. And ESATTA stands for Empowering Self-Advocates to Take Action. And the reason that I helped start ESATTA was back about 11 years ago. I was doing a project on leadership, and I was working with some self-advocates. These are people that identify that they want to be in charge of their lives. They have different disabilities, mainly developmental disabilities, but there's other types as well. And we were working together, basically looking at developing a self-esteem workshop, because one of the things that was always an issue for people was that as somebody with a disability, people would talk for them, get in their way, whatever, and not really give them the opportunity to speak for themselves. So we were developing a self-esteem workshop, and while we were doing that, I started asking, there was 4 self-advocates at that point, and I started saying, well, what do you want this to be? And they said, well, we'd like to do something that gives us some more rights to be able to speak our minds and stuff. And then some of the folks said, well, we'd like to be our own bosses. We'd like to take our life experiences and share them with the world. So I said, well, in the 70s, I used to be in a tree planting cooperative. Why don't we develop a cooperative? And that's how it ended up happening. We were able to get some money to develop and incorporate a nonprofit. And so that's why ESATTA now is happening. Since then, we've been doing a lot of different projects. One of the projects we're doing, which is what Joy talked about with intentional change, is that the agency that I used to work with, Community Living British Columbia, has just come up with an idea and some grants around creating inclusion in innovative ways. And it's all based around COVID-19. And I'll just sort of read a little bit about who CLBC is and why they did this. So Community Living British Columbia serves adults throughout British Columbia with a diagnosis of a developmental mental disability, as well as adults diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome disorder or autism spectrum disorder. CLBC supports the maxim, nothing about us without us, which is what self-advocates have always said. We're so tired of everyone making decisions for us. It's nothing without us. We're going to be there making decisions, and believes that including adults with developmental and intellectual disabilities in their communities results in a richer, more interesting place to live. So about this Community Inclusion Innovation Fund. So this is what, and I'll get into what our proposal is anyhow, the reason they're doing this is that the COVID-19 pandemic continues to have a significant impact on the individual CLBC serves. It's very interesting that Jim talked about COVID, and this is what we're doing around our project. The pandemic has resulted in unprecedented service disruptions. A lot of the agencies had to close down a lot of their programs in the very beginning because there was outbreaks. So they had to figure out different ways to serve people. Employment loss, confusion about COVID-19, social isolation, mental health impacts, and a loss of self-determination. It has been a time of significant innovation as service providers and different providers and families have had to adapt to these challenging conditions. So this fund is around helping take some of those new innovations people have done, as well as look at ways we can get into community. So what ESATTA is going to be doing is working on a project. But first, I would like to introduce the other people from ESATTA, and then I'll get a little more into the project that we're going to do. So I would ask Shelley and Michael and Kara to just turn on their cameras. And I'm just going to do a quick intro for Shelley and Michael and Kara. And of course, I have a million papers. So Shelley Nesman, give us a wave, Shelley, has focused her career on amplifying the voices of vulnerable people. Her work has taken her around the world and countries to bring the message that every person has gifts, skills, and capacities to uncover and share with a waiting world. Shelley is the co-founder of In the Company of Others and works as a consultant and a trainer of person-centered planning and work. A self-proclaimed process nerd, Shelley finds great joy in creating safe and brave spaces for people to gather, tell stories, and learn from one another. In addition, she is the director of family support and leadership for Planned Life Advocacy Networks, PLAN, in Vancouver, BC, and supports the work of Self-Advocate Leadership Network, SALN, and is a member of Empowering Self-Advocates to Take Action. In her spare time, Shelley continues to explore the value of laughter as a health practice and is a certified laughter yoga leader. So she will be leading us later on in some laughter yoga because we all need a good laugh. She created and led the Richmond Laughter Yoga Group, and Richmond is a city just outside of Vancouver, for 7 years until her busy travel and work schedule took her off to do other things. But she still does some pop-up yoga laughter, and we're lucky to have her helping us today, and I'll give a few laughs myself. The next person I'd like to introduce is Michael Mcclellan. Can you give a wave, Michael? Michael Mcclellan he lives in Nanaimo, BC, which is on Vancouver Island. He's a self-advocate leader, one of the top self-advocate leaders in Canada. He's the past president of BC People First. People First is actually international, and he ran the British Columbia one for several years. He is also a co-founder of the Self-Advocate Leadership Network. He's a member of the BC Provincial Accessibility Committee. That's a new committee that just was developed by the Minister for Poverty Reduction and Social Reform or something. They changed the names of the ministry so much it's hard to remember. And Michael was chosen out of very few people to help be on this committee to lead ways to make our province more accessible for people. He's also a board member of Inclusion BC. Inclusion BC is an umbrella group that all the nonprofit cooperatives and nonprofit agencies are a member of, and they're kind of like an advocacy group for all the agencies. He's also on a co-chair of the person-centered practices. It's a learning community, and they do what's called person-centered practices. I'm also a board member of that, and he has been on many other boards and positions throughout his career. He's a passionate leader and works to help uphold the rights of people with disabilities. And then the next person is Kara, and Kara likes it short and sweet. Kara Anderson is a self-advocate, also from Nanaimo, BC. She is a mother of an adult son who has autism. She also is a member of ESATTA Cooperative, which Michael is as well. She also does what is called welcome workshops, which are through Community Living BC, where they do introductions to families and individuals around what supports they are available to them through Community Living BC. So that's the group of us, and we're out to change the world every time we get a chance. So I'll sort of talk a little more about what we're doing. So what we've decided is that we want to go into different communities throughout BC, because as we all know, and as Jim talked about and everybody knows, COVID has created a lot of isolation. And one of the things that we've worked on for years is the isolation that individuals with developmental disabilities have dealt with for years. And then COVID has come along and made it even worse for people. So we decided that what we would do is we would apply for a grant, and what we've called the grant title is Welcome Home, creating a guide to support more welcoming communities. So what we've decided we would like to do is find at least 3 communities in the province and approach a self-advocate group. So a lot of the communities have agencies that support self-advocate groups, and we would like to meet with a self-advocate group. And just off the top of my head, Nelson, British Columbia, for instance, which is a smaller city in the interior BC, Prince George, which is a larger city in the north, and possibly Nanaimo, which is a smaller city in Vancouver Island. We want to meet with those self-advocate groups and talk with them about leadership and help develop and support them around leadership, because Michael and Kara have done quite a bit of work, and they're going to talk more about that shortly around the work that they're doing. We would like to develop their leadership skills in these communities, and then what we want to do is work with some community partners such as City Hall, Rotary clubs, church groups to start having town hall meetings or world cafes. We're working with each community to figure out how they want to get the community together to talk about what are the impediments, what are the things that aren't happening to create inclusion in your community, not just for people with disabilities, but for people that seniors, shut-ins, all kinds of people with mental health issues. We just want to bring everybody together to talk about issues that are happening. Once we figured that out, so in Nelson, I lived there many years ago, and I know transportation is a big issue. So, the buses shut down at 8 o'clock at night, and young people who might live out of town have no ability to get into town to go to anything. And that's something I hear many times when I'm doing workshops with people is, well, Pandy Dart, which is like a wheelchair accessible bus service, shuts down at 6 o'clock. I have no social life, so I have to figure out how to get my wheelchair into town, or I just sit at home with my mom and dad, and I want a life. So we look at all those things, figure out, okay, we've got 3 or 4 topics that have come up: mental health, transportation, housing. Now what we're going to do is we're going to build a kit. We're going to work with the group, and we're going to build a kit that helps the community understand some of these problems. We're going to build workshops, and we're going to talk about housing. Now, housing, for instance, would be where we partner up with an agency, a government agency called BC Housing. BC Housing, who I've worked with over the years, can help with subsidies, can help with creating ways for people to be able to get housing at rates they can afford, because most people with a developmental disability live on below poverty in this province. They might get $1,100 a month. Rent just recently in Vancouver was the average one bedroom was $2,100 a month. So these people have in their check around $375 a month for rent. So that's just about impossible. So what we've done is worked a lot with BC Housing, and we've partnered with developers, because part of what municipalities are starting to do now is when you build an apartment, you need to put in 6 social housing units. So that's where we work with BC Housing to find some subsidies and then be able to help people get into some apartments. So we've done some workshops on housing. And so we work with the community, train them around this kind of information, and allow them to work together now as a group, because the social housing doesn't just have to be for people with disabilities. It can be for seniors who usually live on fixed incomes as well. And so that's one of the things we're doing. We've developed other workshops that we would use, and we've developed one on grief. And we did that several years ago because much of our co-op, my wife passed away, Michael's best friend passed away. We're all kind of all within a period of time. So we were all kind of having a rough time. And I just said, why don't we develop a workshop on grief? So we have one. And right now, the amount of grief that's happening within our communities is incredible. Suicide rates are up with young kids, teenagers. There's so much going on, and we need to get out there and start helping people understand the signs of grief and how to get through it, or at least survive it, because grief never really goes away, but you learn how to live with it. And that's the tools you need to learn, is how to live with it. So these are some of the things that we're looking at doing as well. So in the first, this is a 2-year project. So in the first year, we would work on developing all these kits. So Prince George, up north, more rural, there's a lot of issues there as well. And we would help them figure out what are the areas that you feel are a problem in your community, and we would develop that kit with them. So, and then our goal is to train the self-advocates, this is again the part around leadership, to be able to facilitate these workshops, and ESATTA would stay and mentor and support as well, but also to get some community members involved helping with the workshops and the trainings as well, to build this cohesion, to integrate all the different clubs and whatever, to allow people to bond, because that's something that we have been doing, it's happening, but it just, you can never let it go. Like I said earlier, I retired. That I don't use that word really, that got me a pension, but I just see that there's so much work to still be doing, that we need to be able to do that. Yes.
Okay. Want to ask us some questions?
Okay, in 2 minutes, I'm going to ask you questions.
Okay, you can hold up for 2 minutes.
See, they're excited. They want to share.
Oh, no.
So,
Somebody in the chat session poked him.
somebody poked him. Oh dear. Shelley, you got anything to add? Shelley and I have been writing this proposal. So as she said, she's the technical nerd. I'm the guy who takes all this paint and throws it at a wall, and then she makes a nice drawing. So why don't you help me a little bit on this one? It would be great if you don't mind.
I think you've been doing an amazing job of we've been living, eating, and breathing this for about 2 weeks just because we're trying to write a grant. And so it's good actually to hear you articulate it again, because it helps us to integrate it as well, the idea. And Joy, I really liked the slide you were talking about, spirals. And as you were talking, James, I really had that visual of this project really can work in a spiral way or in a fractal way, in that way that it keeps sort of drilling down into it and then drilling back up and becoming something, expanding and contracting and becoming something really interesting. And so that's what's really this idea, or these ideas, or what has kept me around for over 40 years. I started in the 70s, and our experiences are very much the same, where I was working at the institution to start with. So I had a very good grounding in what this idea of othering actually is. And so I guess the only thing I would like to add to the idea of this grant and what we're going to be trying to work on is the fact that this is for everybody. It's not for people who are labeled with disability or intellectual disability or self-advocate or whatever label. My experience in 45 years has been that people are people. And, if you have a bowl of apples on the table and some are red and some are green and you cut them open, there's so much more similarity than there is difference. And so the overarching message of what ESATTA does is that here we are, we have some real wisdom to share. We want to help you ask questions. We want to help you connect. We want to help you to be better in your own lives. So it's an exciting project. It's always been exciting for me to be involved and just walking alongside. I really see my role as a person who walks alongside and does whatever I can do to amplify and to support.
So one of the things I wanted to say, Shelley, is that the whole point of what we're doing here and the whole point of what James is doing here is he's got an administrative ability to do these kinds of technical things. You have this other total gift of laughter. Kara and Michael, you have boots on the ground in a totally different way. So the combination of this is a triad. I mean, think about that. This is its own triad.
A good one.
Yeah. And Kara and Michael, you guys are a different level of triad. And together, I mean, our old communities, and when I grew up in Eastern Washington on the farm, there were different people with different skills at different levels, and we all had to pull together. And that's the gift that's coming forward. And I know, Shelley, that I think you're the one who has to, I don't know who has to leave early. I don't know what our timeline is. But whatever order, James, you're going to do it in, I know that Karen and Michael want to speak and I want to hear from them. And I don't know if one of them is the first one that has to leave or Shelley has to leave.
No, we're good, actually.
Okay,
good. It was coming in later, so we're good. And yeah, Kara and Michael want to talk because they know I go on and on and on. So they had to give me a poke to say, okay, James, time to hand it over. So
go for it.
So what I was going to do, and Kara and Michael said they were good with this, is sort of ask them a few questions, but they've done a lot of work. So Kara and Michael, turn your mic on.
And come closer into the screen so we can see, or when one of you is speaking, move into the picture so we can see your whole picture, your whole face.
So you got to turn your mic on.
Yes.
There we go.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay,
how about just a quick intro from both of you? I said a bunch, but
yeah, I know. Hi, I'm Kara Anderson. As James said, I live in the city of Nanaimo, which is on Vancouver Island, which is also the traditional and ancestral, traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people. So yeah, and the name of, sorry, my son has, our house is a little chaotic at this time in the morning. What else can I tell you about myself? I'm also a member of SALN. As James said, I'm a member of ESATTA Co-op. My job with ESATTA Co-op is to keep James and Michael in line.
It's a big job.
And it's a very big job because trust me, these two get coding. It's like, oh God. Also, James's other jobs with the ESATTA co-op is he's our chauffeur, our techie, our roadie, and whatever other job we can think of him. We need his help. Whatever other job we can think of, we need help with. What else can I tell you about myself? That's
Kara, can I ask you a question?
yeah, go for it,
What is
Joyce.
the most profound thing that you have learned in your lifetime that people who did not grow up as you did and who does not have an autistic child? I think that's what James said. I have no idea about any of that. So what's it like for you, and what is the biggest gift that you could give us from your wisdom that we don't know?
Oh,
What would you share with us?
Well, the fact I also sorry. Michael's Jaws, the choice of Jaws. My wisdom would be absolute patience, which doesn't always work for me because I am not the world's most patient person. Also, one thing that has worked for me is having my family around. Like my mom and my dad have been my number one. I could do the most dumb, stupid thing, and they're still there to pick me off, dust me off, so to speak. I guess I don't know. I don't know how I could totally. I've had unique experiences. I worked in my son's school when I haven't lived in BC all my life. I lived in Alberta. Also, I lived in the city of Calgary, which is the southern one of the biggest city in the southern part of Alberta. So I worked at my son's school for years, and I learned lots of things. I learned patience. I learned all kinds of. I watched kids take their first steps, say their first words. Just it takes a tribe to. It takes a tribe to make the world go around. As much as everybody would like to think it doesn't, it does.
So what you've really learned is how to yield to all this chaos.
Yeah.
How to be patient, how to allow people to bring the gifts that they have forward, and how to, in fact, develop leadership at the level that each person has. So Michael obviously has some leadership skills because he's moved into these different places.
Yep. Michael's helped me develop those leadership skills. And the one thing that's also helped me is having a very big mouth. Sorry. I'm sarcastic. I'm big mouthed. If I don't like the way something somebody's saying, trust me, I usually let you know.
Well, that's awesome. And what is it that Michael, what have you been trying to say? I want to hear from you.
I'll try to get him in the middle a bit better.
So where do I start? Because there's so much stuff I do.
Start anywhere you want. Give us, okay, if you only had 2 minutes to give us the gem of your life, what have you learned that we could not possibly know because we haven't walked in your shoes? What do you know that we need to know to help us through this COVID period, to help us through all this chaos in the world? What is the gift you have to bring us?
I think for me, while COVID's gone on, the gift's been more about really growing in the sense of some of the work I do, growing a network where people are there to support each other. Definitely through SALN and taking on grants where we help get people connected. We have a Leading Connections grant now that goes till
March,
end of 2023.
Yeah.
So end of fiscal, which would be the end of March.
Yeah. So March.
And so getting those connections to happen are really good.
So let me ask you a question, Michael. When, as a person growing up with what James is calling diverse abilities, I have no knowledge, because fortunately I was born with certain capacity. So what do I do in my life when I meet someone like you and I have no idea what's going on and I unintentionally shun you, or I push over you, or I shove you aside because I think you don't have a capacity? How do you feel about that? And what is it that you've had to learn to do to cope and to take your place as a leadership advocate?
Okay, so I don't just have a developmental disability.
Okay.
I also am visually impaired.
Okay. Strike two.
So, and have a seizure disorder on top of that. So I've got strike three too.
Wow.
But all three of those things, and I just continue with life, whatever. I go, I take risks, I have fun.
You do things that would if your mother knew half the things you did, she would have had a heart attack years
He
ago.
dragged me on what's that thing? He dragged me on the most horrifying zip line in the world.
Well, no, not the most horrible would have been if I would have taken you up to Mount Washington.
Yeah.
Oh God.
That's even worse. But I just, as a kid, I just grew up. My mom made me have the independence. And as I got older and realized and learned that I had a developmental disability and things like that, I just kept.
Power of the white cane.
It's been the power. Like, I just kept advocating, and that's where it grew. And I grew my passion in the advocacy field and learning.
Also telling your mom that you were getting a white cane, regardless if she liked it
or not. Yes.
Say that again. I missed that statement. What did you say, Kara?
I said, Michael, there's a story of Michael going to a camp for people who are blind or visually impaired, and somebody got to first time ever, until then he never used one, a white cane, and him calling his mom or going home after
calling my mom.
Calling his mom and said, basically, Mom, I am getting a white cane. You are not, I'm like old enough not to be holding on to your arm anymore, so I am going to learn how to use this white cane.
Wow.
And I was 16 at that point.
Wow. That, that's a kind of risk. Most people who are technically able, we like to cover up and say, oh, we don't need this, we don't need that. We like to pretend that we're independent, resilient, but learning to actually live with blindness, using a cane and trusting the world around you, that is one heck of an achievement.
It's actually a gift.
Yeah. And trust me, when he wants to be, he is deadly with that cane, because I've gotten in the way a few times and got locked in the ankles.
Well, you have to watch out when he's doing archery. He gets the bullseye.
Are you serious? You do?
Oh, yeah.
So I am a risk taker, major risk. I've bungee jumped.
Yep.
I've hiked 2,500 feet down a rainforest in Costa Rica.
Axe throwing.
I've axe thrown.
Zip lined.
Skied. Yeah.
You 5-pin bowl. What else?
Wow. So these are things that you do in corporations when you take a leadership trip. I've done
no, just stuff he's done on a.
This is just fun stuff I do.
Yeah, just fun stuff he does.
So these are just, I go live life like if I'm just
like anybody else.
Yep. And my advocacy work is just another part of who I am.
So Michael is one of the best people to support others. His heart goes out to everybody. Like, he's there for everybody. And and that's where his advocacy comes in and why he's so good at it. Just saying that when things happen, him and Kara are always checking in on you. Are you okay? How's it going? It's just wonderful.
So talk about emotional resilience coaches. You guys are going to be able to take this entire county, or this, what do you call it, a province?
Province.
You guys are Canadian. I don't know your words.
Yeah.
Province.
You're going to take this whole province. You're going to be able to infect people with spiral enthusiasm, grounded in emotional resilience, build it out, teach leaders how to actually lead in a whole different way. And you're going to have a model in the end that we can use down here in Washington State. Any community can use anywhere. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Washington State is really quite advanced in their employment programs, which is quite good.
Yeah.
I'll back off now.
Yeah.
Yes,
And I mean,
who needs
part
to
of the
talk
thing is
next?
I mentor.
Yeah.
I'm a mentor for younger self-advocates. Part of SALN's role is to mentor, and the leadership network mentors. I've got two people I mentor. You've got
I've got
one.
I've got one. We have a few other members, one other member who
We've just started mentoring an up and coming group of young people who are not part of our SALN, but it's part of who we are, SALN mentors. And all of us right now, the people that have been in the field
for
years, almost all of us have a young person mentoring.
Why did you start SALN, Michael?
May
2019.
Yeah.
And why did you start it?
Oh, that's your start.
My buddy, one of my best friends, Alex, and I were wanting a network, but a network of self-advocates. So up here, they have what you call a CEO network or a executive directors network of service providers in the CLB community living field. Well, we want that exact same thing, but for self-advocates. And
You're organizing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Shelley, what do you see these guys doing that I could learn, and that the rest of us that are not in, we're othered over here, and these guys are othered here, and then there's other people over here othered. So what is the best gift that you've learned from working with all these guys?
That it's not about me.
It's true.
And so the idea that I can be in service and because I've witnessed Michael and Karen for 40 years, I've witnessed people being in service. My whole jam really is about, what do we have to offer? What do we give? This world needs us all to be touching in with what our gifts, skills, and capacities are. And I noticed when I was younger, this whole group of people who were very juicy and ripe and had a lot to offer, but people had labeled them. There was a line that you had to be above in order to be noticed, right, you guys? Would you agree? And so the world was losing out. And so my whole career has really just been about trying to lower that bar. That's a terrible way to put it, but trying to support the world to see that every person, no matter who they are, we make an assumption they have nothing to offer. And the fact is that we miss out when we don't get the opportunity to benefit from the gifts that people have.
So what's interesting is you use that term, lower the bar, and then you said it's an awful idea. But you know what? People who are incarcerated are living behind bars. We put people behind bars.
Right.
Metaphysically, emotionally, psychologically, ecologically, economically. I mean, we bar people up all the time, and then we go to bars to feel better. So it's an interesting joke.
Wonderful. Actually, I'm going to write it down. It's a good message.
So let's lower all these bars, get over ourselves, get in the party, get in our community, get in our group, and start helping each other, because it's the only way we're going to change the world in the first place.
Exactly. I mean, one thing that SALN did is, how do I put this? When COVID hit,
Mhm.
It took off.
it took, like SALN, we were meeting like, you know, about 3 or 4 times a year. And then, sorry, COVID hit and SALN took off. It was just like, okay, how can you guys help? I mean, the gentleman who's the CEO of Community Living British Columbia, he's friends with Michael. He's like, okay, guys, how are we?
Well, we did. You want? I know where you're going.
No, you know where I'm going. Okay, please let me do this because I'm going to blubber otherwise.
One thing we did is we're going through all this stuff, and we needed to take. I couldn't stand the word client, and so I said to him one day, and this is during our pandemic and everything, I said, I can't stand it. He told me, can you come up with something better? From that, he actually kind of
didn't think we were going to do anything with it. It was just like, oh, okay, if you guys want to do something, go ahead. Well, about 2.5 months later, we had a 34-page report on words we like, words we don't like, and the words that are slightly acceptable.
Wow.
With memes.
With memes.
James, you need to, if you need to get a copy of that and add that to other networks so we can learn these words. I mean, this is important.
And these are just SALN's opinion. Every some self-advocate, like from.
We're not there to be the language police.
That's always our saying. We're not. Some people like the word diversibility. Some people don't like the word diversibility. People are like, I have a disability, so that's part of who I am.
Sure.
Thank you. I'm proud of that fact. So,
can I add something? So Self-Advocate Leadership Network, one of the biggest coups they did in the very beginning of the pandemic was, in the very beginning, what was happening was people were going into hospital that had disabilities, were nonverbal, and they weren't allowing anybody in with them. They weren't allowing anybody in the hospital. And one young woman died in the hospital by herself, afraid, and couldn't vocalize. And you guys say what you did.
Okay, so from there, with the help of some parents, some very ticked off executive directors,
a whole bunch of us got together and wrote what we call our Accenture's visitors policy. We took it to the government, our provincial government, and with the help of that government, it got passed into law that anybody who has a disability, seniors, Indigenous people, whatever, anybody who needs someone to go with them to help support for their healthcare needs can have somebody go into the hospital with them.
That's incredible. Wow.
And they weren't letting people in. So these guys kicked the door in.
Support workers couldn't go in, parents couldn't go in, families couldn't go in. Nobody was allowed.
That's stunning. Congratulations and thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, okay.
So anybody anywhere else in the world can look at what they just did and what they just said. That's an example of leadership. That's an example of direct action. That's an example of how we can learn from people who are different than us and get things done. Thank you.
You're welcome. It took a lot. We got a whole bunch of people backing us up too. And the one thing that we've learned with the SALN is the supporters, the people who support SALN also need support.
Wow.
Because what happens with a lot of self-advocacy groups, and I'll finish talking in a second, is that they get started. Shell's laughing at me. They get somebody to help them like it's somebody from an organization, a service or like the organizations, their service provider, whatever. But if the supporters don't have the support of the organization or somebody else to help them, we've learned, not always, but we've learned that more often than not, it falls apart.
So we're truly a community.
Yeah, exactly. And also another thing I'll put in a little tidbit is self-advocacy groups. They have to be separate from a service provider, because I'm not saying all, but you have those service providers and people who support, who push their own agenda and not the agenda that needs to be pushed.
That's one of the reasons we developed ESATTA, was
That
that
too.
the self-advocates had a voice. I'm
Yeah,
just a
exactly.
supporter. I'm wondering, Joy, if we need to move to the laughter yoga, because it
Yeah.
looks like we're getting 17 minutes left, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think you do need to move to the laughter yoga part. And I want to seriously thank you, Kara and Michael. We have a lot more to discuss and learn from you. And I'm looking forward to your programs becoming online available so that other people can, so that we can package it. I mean, that's one of the things that's useful, is that you've blazed trails.
Yeah.
Technology today allows us to package it. Social media allows us to share it. You guys can change the world because of the work you're doing in your local community. Thank you so much.
You're
And
welcome.
we do have a website for the Leadership Network. It's salnbc.com.
Yep.
salnbc.com. Thank you so much. Now
You're
thinking,
quite welcome.
Then you
That's
want to learn more.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. James, back to you. Let's mute the rest of us. I think Shelley, are you doing
It's
it?
Shelley. Shelley's going to do the laughter yoga. I don't know how much time we have. I think we have like 10 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
So you might be doing it and I'll watch, Shelley. We'll see what
Yeah,
happens.
go for it.
Well, I'm just sitting here feeling so blessed in terms of being a part of this spiraling, right? It really is. And I'm going to keep playing with that metaphor in terms of what we do together, and how when we come together and make action, we can learn from one another, we can be with one another. And about in 2007, I guess, I was at a retreat for families who have children who have exceptional needs or special needs or disabilities. And it was it's a fairly, the group was very busy and had all kinds of things going on in terms of their grief levels and what they were dealing with, and also all the advocacy they had to do. So it's a pretty serious group. And we were having breakfast, and this man walked through our eating area, and he had a rubber chicken tied to the top of his head. I didn't know him. There were more than one group at the retreat. And so I thought, oh, I have to know who that is. And so I went and met this man. He's a good friend of mine now. His name's Alan O'Meara, a man from Vancouver who was in the area in the retreat. He was learning with the creator of laughter yoga. He was learning how to teach laughter yoga. So it was a sort of train the trainer event. And the man who created laughter yoga is a physician from Mumbai. His name is Madan Kataria. And Dr. Kataria, he's a medical physician. Dr. Kataria actually was at the retreat, and he gifted that group of family members with a half an hour of laughter yoga. No one had heard anything about it. No one knew about it. And what I witnessed was a complete shift for people, even in that short time. It was about a half an hour. He took us through a series of breathing, clapping, and laughter exercises, which were simulated to the space of enough serotonin, dopamine to have been released that we just lightened up. And that's exactly what happened. That group became lighter and was lighter for the whole weekend. And so I was pretty fascinated with it. And the journey for me was around bringing Alan to do some laughter yoga for a large group of people, many of whom had that label of disability. And then I decided that I wanted to learn how to facilitate laughter yoga. So I went and took 3-day very intensive training with Alan. And after that, I started the Richmond Laughter Group. So that's just a little bit about the history. What I learned and continue to learn about laughter is that there are, we as a race, or as humanity, we continue to learn about the benefits of laughter, and how how it doesn't matter if we laugh at something we find funny, or whether we laugh at something, at a movie that we're enjoying, or a book, or a comic, or whether we just laugh because laughter is something we can do. And so laughter yoga, the saying is often simulate till you stimulate, right? Which is another way to say fake it till you make it. But I like simulate till you stimulate. So this is a practice. It's a health practice, really. It's not entertainment. It's a yogic practice. And yoga, the yoga part of it would be connecting. So yoga, one of the ways to think about yoga is that it yokes things together. And so laughter yoga will bring together four different parts, and one is clapping. So when we clap, we're actually activating a lot of the nerve endings in our hands, and we're bringing our energy levels up. And so there are some laughter claps there, and then we bring in breathing, because breathing is such an important part of all of this. Laughter actually helps us to expand our lungs and to expel air from our lungs. And so breathing becomes a part of this. The other part of this, of course, is laughter, that when we are doing that action, that activity, we are not able to do other things. When you're laughing, you can't be making your grocery list in your head, right? Or you can't think about something that has happened to you in the day, or what's going to happen to you in the future. Laughter brings you right into the present moment at all times. And so those are some of the activities. The other part of this is, and it's a little easier when we're together, but eye contact, as much as possible, is also a really important part of this, because laughter is a way to connect. In fact, it's universal. You can go anywhere and laugh. People, you will see or hear or witness or be with people who are laughing. And so it brings us together with a commonality. When languages are different, laughter actually is something we can find as a commonality. And so just really quickly, more benefits would be that expansion of your lungs and bringing air in is very good for you. It helps your brain to create more hormones like serotonin and dopamine. There's lots of empirical evidence coming in around that. It also helps you to lower your blood pressure if you have blood pressure issues. And it's just an overall good thing to do, I would say. And so I thought I would just do a couple of laughter yoga exercises to give you a taste of what that's like. And James, I know you have a couple you really enjoy doing too. So I'll bring you in. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm gonna start us with let's just take a nice deep breath. So everybody just take a nice deep breath. And then let that out. Excellent. Okay, so this time when you take in a nice deep breath, I just want you to imagine your mind just emptying. So just imagine everything going empty. Ready? Go. And then let that out. Good. So if you were, and this is really just an invitation to play. One thing that's important is that if this is not something that resonates for you, if you think, oh, this is just a little too much for me to do right now, you get the same benefits just by being present with laughter. And so when you hear people laughter, we have mirror neurons in our bodies that when I see someone smiling, because I can see Joy, your smile right now is just so huge. And so it makes me feel better, right? And so, if you're just wanting to sit and listen, that's okay too. When I do this online, and I have been practicing and doing pop-ups online, it's a bit challenging and people are often on mute. And I say, oh, just take it off mute. We'll have a cacophony. because the other part of this is when you do this for an hour or so, 45 minutes with people, you become primed to laugh. And the last part of a laughter yoga experience or a session would be that everybody just has a few minutes to let all that laughter out. And it is not fake laughter any longer. It really becomes this wonderful experience where we're all together and we're laughing, and we don't even know why we're laughing, but we are. So I would encourage you to look for laughter yoga in your area. It's pretty easy to find. There are 6,000 laughter groups around the world, lots in the US. There's the really big one in California. And so if you look for laughteryoga.org, that would be the American, I would say, go-to place. And in Canada, it's laughteryoga.ca if you're looking for groups or you want to explore it a little bit more. So let's take another deep breath. And this time when you breathe out, I just want you to do a gentle ha, 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 ha. Is everybody ready? So breathe in. Let me demonstrate. I'll demonstrate. So you breathe in. And then ha, 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 ha. Okay. So, all right. So let's try that one more time, a little bit louder this time. So breathe in. And yes, yeah, that's excellent, excellent. All right, beautiful. One of my favorite laughter yoga exercises, which I don't know why, but it just really makes me want to laugh, is called closed mouth laughter. So if you're going to do a little bit of simulated laughter, what I want you to do is make a line with your mouth like this. And now I just want you to laugh, but don't let it come out of your mouth. So just hold it in, but let it come out. There's this kind of funny balance thing that happens. So all right, now open your mouth and let that out. Excellent. Okay, so everyone take a nice deep breath. Breathe in and breathe out. So you might already be starting to feel that sort of oxygenation that's happening. I know I am, and because this is a practice of mine, I can tick right into it pretty quickly. So I'm ready to laugh. James, do you want to do a demo of a laughter yoga exercise?
Sure.
Great.
Okay, I'm gonna do so. So here I am. It's payday. I just got my check. I'm looking at my check, and I'm just going, "Oh my heavens!" Paycheck wasn't a good one. Like I said, I retired, so God knows what's coming. The other one I really like to do, but is the cell phone one. Somebody's phoning me up. Joy just phoned me. She tells me a good joke. Oh, that's great, Joe. Oh, Joy, you're killing me.
It does change the energy. I mean, substantially. I took a yoga class one time and I should have kept going, but I don't think they had more of them. I spent an hour. I walked out of there. My whole face hurt. All these muscles in my face, my stomach.
Yeah.
And I felt terrific. This is awesome.
Yeah. I have one more I can offer. Can I offer one more just as an end? And so laughter yoga exercises. Kara's asking for a teapot. Maybe we should finish with that.
I'm a little teapot, short and stout. Lift me up and pour me.
Makes us very human.
We have to get out of ourselves, right? So Dr. Kataria really would say this is a peace movement, right? And so the idea is that if we can laugh together, it gives us more opportunity to connect and be together. And so, many laughter yoga exercises are values-based. And so hearty laughter would ask us to stretch our arms out wide, to open up our heart chakra, open that up. And then if you just tilt your head back a little bit, and imagine all your laughter. So we're going to laugh for just a few seconds, but all that laughter is coming out of your heart and filling the room. So hearty laughter.
Yeah, it is infectious.
Yeah. So everyone just finish with a nice deep breath to reoxygenate.
I want you passing out. So we got like 5 minutes for questions or
Yeah, I want to thank Kara and Michael. Thank you so much. And thank you for the teapot that adds. And Jim, can you come back on? And James, Shelley, thank you so much for opening up your heart, sharing your humanity. This is what's really key. We have to reconnect in our community through our emotional taproot to the earth, to each other. This is what will get us through those bars. This is what will get us through the chaos. This is what will get us through rigidity. So this is a great first step to a event for a 3-day series. Jim, close us up. Ask us questions. Do what you do.
Thank you so much, Joy and Shelley, James, Kara, and Michael. This has been splendid. It's been heartful. You've spoken through our vulnerabilities today, everyone, and enabled us to honor that in a compassionate and caring way. So I want to express my deep gratitude for this session. Thank you so much, Joy, for convening this aspect of our common humanity.
So critical.
It's so critical. I mean, I'm thinking of Thich Nhat Hanh in this moment. You know, he makes a point that the lotus blossom doesn't emerge from the marble; it emerges from the mud.
Yeah.
And that in the end, the enlightenment that we all seek is based on what he calls suffering compassion, the ability to just really open ourselves up to the more vulnerable and embrace them as part of our own identity in a spirit of loving compassion and tenderness. So I think that's been a very important contribution on the 400th day of Humanity Rising. You know, and I wanted just to get your comments because, as you pointed out, James, you know, one of the things that's been a result of COVID is that we've all been isolated, and that this isolation has caused all kinds of psycho-emotional and physical problems, not only in British Columbia, but in the United States and literally all over the world. Suicide rates are up. Drug abuse is up, alcoholism, domestic violence is up, depressions, chronic diseases. So there's really nothing more important at this moment than building a healthy community. And so maybe as we close out, we can just have a word from each one of you about healthy community. You know, and if there's one thing that you want to impart, James and Kara and Shelley, I don't see Michael, maybe he already left, but just would love to have each of you just make a comment on, for you, what is the most important aspect in building healthy community? And then Joy, you can have a final word and just tell us a little bit about what's going to happen tomorrow. But James, why don't we start with you and then Shelley and then Kara?
For me, it's just serving the community. The community's given me many great things, and I want to give back to the community.
Beautiful.
Michael, you want to go next?
Shelley?
I just wanted to say every person has gifts, skills, and capacities, and the world needs them.
Say that again.
Every person, every human being has gifts, skills, and capacities, and the world needs every one of them.
Absolutely.
Boy, that brings tears to my eyes.
Yeah, that's the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Every variant is included.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Shelley. And thank you for your laughter. That was beautiful.
My pleasure.
I was chuckling here behind the screen. So Kara and Michael, just a word as we close. What to you is the most important thing about community?
Community, the most important thing for community to me is Being included.
Mm.
I have something to contribute. I may contribute differently than everybody else, but I have something to contribute. So that's my Michael.
Everybody's included in the community.
Yep.
It's inclusion.
It's inclusion. Also, we have a totally accessible community. That would be, and just not for people with physical disabilities, but for everybody. So, yeah, those are my. You'd be surprised how many curbs I have friends who use wheelchairs and walkers, and how many curbs are at, like, horrible angles to take a walker down, a wheelchair down.
Mm.
Wow.
Well, thank
Thank
you
you.
both. Thank you both.
Thank
You've
you
been
for-
very precious
thank you.
today.
Thank you for
Thank you.
having us.
With pleasure. With pleasure. Joy, you want to give a final word?
What's amazing is the things that you learn when you simply stop to ask the question. Because everybody has a different viewpoint. Everybody has knowledge that you don't have. You can't possibly have. You're not them. And so what it is that they have to bring can help us all the time. And getting your own ego out of the way, I think, Shelley, you said that, getting your ego out of the way. I mean, it's really easy to have a big ego if you're getting trophies and you're doing this and you're doing that, and you got your PhD or you got your job and you got your money. But you know what? That doesn't have anything to do with being human. You know, it's the humanity. Humanity Rising is such a beautifully apt title for what you've been doing, Jim. So I want to give you a kudo back. And we are raising humanity. And the one thing, the gift that we got that came from COVID and all this nightmare of stuff the last 2 years, is it got rid of the bars on my eyes. And it's made me have to look at who are we as humans? What is it that we have to give? What actually matters? And you know what? When you go to a funeral at the end of a life, it isn't about the trophies and the stuff. It's what did that guy or that woman or that child or that person, how did you matter? And that is the important part. How did you actually influence people through the heart? And that's what this whole next couple of days, but that's what today was about. That was about James. He's put his heart and soul into Lower Mainland BC. He's raised a son. He's dealt with personal challenges. He's got a son who's bringing forward a whole new social media technology. All of those are awesome. Every one of you has done something valuable. The next day with Maureen Edwardson, she's going to be talking about the metaphysical and how do we work in this non-human. It's still living energy, but it's not human. We can't see people. It's in the intangible world. How do you actually work in that world with love and compassion and gentility and clear the static out of our emotional receptors? And she's bringing on Lawrence Singer, who's going to be talking about the 5 rhythms of the globe. He's an amazing human being, also bringing a whole different angle to how do we unite our world through song and music and cosmic connection. That's tomorrow. And then Monday we'll bring in Barbara Ledger, who's talking about Peace First, and Irene Morgan, who's also talking about Peace First for 2 completely different angles. So after chat, let's go. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you, everyone. It was Jesus that said, even as you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it unto me. And that's a very important admonition for all of us all the time. So thank you all very, very much. We now want to invite you to the after chat session. You'll see the link in the chat box. We welcome everyone to join. Tomorrow, Joy will convene her second of 3 days on the very important matter of intentional change. We'll say goodbye for now. Thank you all very much. We'll see you again here tomorrow, same time, same station for Humanity Rising.
Thank you.
Thank you.